Chris, thank you so much for joining me here at SuperReturn International. You and 5,000 of your industry.
Incredible.
There's obviously a great appetite for you all to come together and share ideas.
Yes, it's a wonderful venue. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Good. What are you seeing as key trends and drivers of secondary market activity in the current environment? And what are you hearing when you come to a gathering like this?
Yeah, certainly the one that is most apparent to Nasdaq is the challenging exit environment that we've had over the last several years. And this in turn has led to a drought of exits for portfolio companies, which has downstream effects of limiting the distributions to LPs. This has put them in a position where they're having to find creative ways to fund new and ongoing commitments in their portfolio. One of the tools that they have is utilizing the secondary market. It's now viewed as a viable tool. Whereas if we were to go back 5 to 10 years, it was really a transaction of last resort. It's now becoming a first-class tool inside of the LP's toolkit in order to manage their portfolio, particularly their commitments. And so they are effectively creating synthetic distributions in their portfolio through the secondary market.
So how does that fund secondaries business fit into the strategic vision at Nasdaq?
Yeah, at Nasdaq, we're focused on being the trusted fabric of the global financial system. And we do that by providing platforms to provide liquidity, transparency, and integrity. And Nasdaq Fund Secondaries fits squarely into the liquidity piece of that. And we're doing what we've done for the last 50 years in other markets, which is modernize infrastructure by bringing technology to all participants and increasing the efficiency and the ease with which participants can transact.
You talked there about technology. It is transformative, and is that something you're seeing in this area?
Yeah, so I look at the space and I think of the constraints that we have from a capacity perspective. And technology is going to be the thing that needs to drive efficiency. I think that standardization will play a role, but I think the majority of gains will come from technology being adopted by all the participants in the market, whether it's the buyer, whether it's the seller, whether it's the advisor or the service providers. And I think that's driven by two things. I think thematically it's AI-driven diligence, teams being able to do more with less, and then digital execution platforms like Nasdaq, where you have a predictable way to transact and predictable venues where you go and gather pools of capital.
And it will become innate, that sort of use of technology, rather than being a layer on the top. Companies will have it inbuilt.
That's right, and we've seen that across markets over time, that it becomes a standard, and that is how you transact, rather than it be each transaction being a one-off deal, having to go find the buyer, having to go find the seller. Having a central place of execution allows there to be both more timely execution and eventually standardization.
Just going back to something you mentioned earlier, you talked about deal flow and exits being slow. What do you think are the main hurdles still at the moment in the secondary market, and what do you expect to see in the next sort of 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, as an industry, we talk about what is it going to take to get to the next 10 times in volume. And if you look at what is really capacity constraining us, it's human capital. There aren't simply enough people to run the deals that the market's going to bring. And in order to hit those numbers, which the industry agrees we can get to, we're going to have to adopt technology that is a force multiplier that allows us to transact significantly more volume per unit of headcount in the industry. And that's across all participants in the industry. So we're going to have technology be the driver of efficiency that allows us to unlock the volume potential that is currently latent in the market.
So technology is a driver and actually improving liquidity. I guess some of the other challenges might be around things like tax and regulation. That's something you're seeing too.
That's right, and particularly in North America, we're seeing funds limited by tax code. So in any given year, a fund can typically transact up to 2% of their NAV without triggering tax implications that would be catastrophic by any measure. And so you see funds having to limit the amount of liquidity in any given year, which has given rise to the notorious liquidity queue. And in older vintage funds, we see the liquidity queue out now 2 to 3 years. There is a provision in North America that if you run your transactions through a qualified matching service, which is a prescriptive designation given by the Internal Revenue Service in the United States, that if it's run in accordance with that prescription, you can bring volume up to 10% in a given year. And Nasdaq Fund Secondaries is a qualified matching service designated by a private ruling by the Internal Revenue Service in the United States. And so we're able to work with GPs and give them confidence that they can increase the liquidity that they can offer to their investors in any given year without triggering tax consequences. And all of that to say, we believe fundamentally at Nasdaq Fund Secondaries that assets that are easier to sell are easier to own.
Chris, a great note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us here at SuperReturn. I hope you had a great conference.
Thank you for having me.